instructor and podcaster, started a new business.
And of course, a little bit of accident there, but we've got two people here today with us. We have, well, first guest was Ted, and he decided to sort of kind of semi co-host, and we've got additional person today who is Matt, and it's very exciting to have a new face and perhaps new side of story to be told. And he's much better known out there from what I know. So we're about to kind of unfold lots of stuff. Today stream would be basically about Matt. That's how we're gonna frame today, and we're just gonna
Wow.
have a good time and a good amount of casual talk about who Matt is and what we do and what he can tell us. Why don't you take it
Cool.
away and just kind of introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks guys for having me on the stream. This is I'm looking forward to it. Um yeah, so I'm Matt, Matt Donley. I've got a YouTube channel called MasterSketchUp, and a website mastersketchup.com, and I've written a few books on SketchUp. And so basically I just, I do tutorials on to teach people how to use SketchUp, and that's basically the story.
Awesome. I mean, we have a few topics that we want to cover, especially, things about your book and perhaps what you do in sort of daily basis, or perhaps some of the projects that you've done, something like that. What would you like to start with?
Um, doesn't matter. I mean, we can talk about I guess some of the SketchUp work that I've done, in kind of the history there. So I started with SketchUp. I don't even remember the year. I think it was like 2007 or something like that. It was back when Google had purchased SketchUp from Atlas Software, and just kind of stumbled across it, and was just so impressed by how easy it was. Like I'm the type of person that really hates reading instruction manuals for software, like for software
Yep.
specifically. Like I feel like software should just work intuitively. Like you should be able to at least figure out the basics, without having to go and like read the manual. So that was kind of my first impression of SketchUp. And the capacity at which I used it was in carpentry. So I was a carpenter at the time, and I was using it to help me just visualize the different projects that I was working on. And that was how I used it for many years. And then eventually I got into project management for a cabinet company. We would do cabinet installations for schools, hospitals,
Wow.
and laboratories. And so I kind of brought it into that work. I was a project manager slash like project engineer. So, if there was ever some sort of like, weird condition that we needed to figure out, but it like wasn't a big enough problem to like get an architect involved or something like that, I would go out to the field, and things with like existing conditions, I would go out and kind of see what was there, and create a simple SketchUp model, and something to just document the decisions on what we wanted to do with the project for the guys out in the field. And that was kind of actually the first time I started working with layout, and actually creating documents with that.
So, what year was that?
That was like 2010, 11, 12, something like that. Yeah.
I
Okay.
see. I see. And you're
Yeah.
you're still doing that, or would you say you kind of moved away from that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I don't do that anymore. I actually in 2012, that was when I launched my website, and
MasterSketchup.com.
MasterSketchUp. Yeah, that's when I started. That's when I started the website and started doing tutorials like part-time after work and stuff like that. And then in 2014, that's when I released my first book. And shortly after that, I quit my job and, basically was just running MasterSketchUp full time.
Yeah, I think that was around the first time we met at that base camp.
Now, which base camp was that?
That was the 2014 base camp was Steamboat.
Steamboat. Okay.
Springs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't meet Matt there, but
I have a Steamboat shirt. I should have worn it.
I have socks. I don't think I ever got a shirt.
Oh yeah.
I got the socks.
Several pairs of socks too.
Oh, so many
I
socks.
have the water bottle right there. I don't know if you can see it.
Nice.
My screens are still frozen for some reason, and I
Oh,
can't
no.
see you guys. Yeah.
No, we're
right.
receiving all fine. So
Good.
all is good.
So this is really interesting, Matt. I always was under the impression that you came from an architecture background, a traditional, like in the traditional sense of architecture. So hearing this story is pretty interesting to me because, I mean, there are a lot of parallels between architecture and millwork drawings. I did both in the past, and
Right.
so that's definitely interesting to hear. What was the catalyst there to say, oh, what was that aha moment that was like, oh, this is something that I think other people need to know, that got you kind of down this road?
Well, I think really the original idea was more just like I had always wanted to build like an online business, and I just liked the idea of the fact that you could build something that's completely geographically untethered. I mean, you could literally reach anyone around the world, and at the time I had tried and failed many different ideas, and I was trying to think of what's something I could build, like a YouTube channel and build content and kind of build a business around that. And I felt, for whatever reason, maybe because I didn't have any better ideas, but I thought I had a good enough, because I mean at the time when I started MasterSketchUp, like I really wasn't an expert. And I mean, even to this day, I'm learning stuff all the time. I mean, there's plenty of people that are far better than me, and have, not only, just the knowledge, but the experience and, just different workflows and stuff. But, I felt like that would be like my best chance at succeeding with an online business is taking the knowledge that I had started cultivating with SketchUp. And, I felt like I had a decent approach to how I teach things that I could make it work. And, but the fact that I'm not an architect, that's actually haunted me for a long time. And you definitely felt like unqualified at times to teach. And that's why, so like when I launched my first book, it was, so my first book was SketchUp to Layout. I conveniently have it right here.
Nice.
And I recently just released an updated version to this book, which you can pre-order it right now. It's actually being manufactured right now. But the first book I wrote was written from a complete beginner standpoint. So it was really about the fundamentals of the software, the functionality of the software itself. When I wrote my second book, which is this one here, SketchUp and Layout for Architecture, I knew I wasn't qualified to, write a book about architecture. And so I partnered up with an architect, Nick Sonder, and he's an amazing architect. And he, from my opinion, is he was kind of one of the first architects to use SketchUp and layout exclusively in like high-end custom architecture. And I met him at one of the base camps, and just kind of floated the idea by him about, you know, co-writing a book together. And so that's what we did with the second book. And so just kind of combining, you know, my experience of like learning how to teach, like the fundamentals, like the step-by-step, the tools, all that stuff, combining it with his workflow, you know, that he perfected over like a decade of using just SketchUp and layout. You know, we came up with a book that literally just kind of walks through that entire workflow that he came up with. So you can take the book and kind of, you know, use it on your own projects to kind of follow through. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the book I mentioned before we got on the stream,
really?
recommending a book to a friend who had switched from MicroStation to SketchUp, which I don't know why, not to knock MicroStation, but that's a difficult piece of software to use for construction documentation.
Yeah.
But he knew it really well, and after a certain point, he realized, you know, he needed to switch to something new. And I said, "Oh, if you're moving to SketchUp, you should definitely check this out." And I had recommended your book, and he said that was really a pretty valuable piece of information for him, because layout is not the easiest program to use. I find every time I've ever used it, I unintentionally overload it, and it just feels like you hit a brick wall sometimes when you don't have resources at your fingertips to call on. Like, you know, I for a long time had a lot of difficulties trying to get it, because I would always use raster and vector combined, I think it is.
Never
and it would
hybrid mode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the hybrid mode, that's it. And it would just chug.
Yeah, that's like
Especially,
the most processor intensive rendering mode you can use.
Yeah. I was like, but why?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a lot of frustrations with layout. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There was a recent like, I don't know, protest on the SketchUp forum, just talking about
the performance,
right. And how it feels like, you know, it's just not getting the attention that it deserves.
I mean, I think they are putting more attention to it. You know, just from the conversations that I've had with those people who are working on things at SketchUp, I tend to get the feeling that they're like finally making a little bit more concerted effort to focus some development on layout. But I mean, we'll see in future iterations.
I personally feel that they are putting a lot of efforts to make an improvement every version, I feel, but not significant enough to make all that much of a difference. And unintentionally, we are putting more and more detail into model every year as well. So, you know, it's amount that you have to be able to handle.
Yeah. I mean, here's my honest like gripe with the way development goes.
It's in recording, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. So I'm hopeful that my opinion will be heard by many. You know, just an example. Okay, several years ago they revamped the generate report feature in SketchUp. Which, you know, the theory behind generate report is really good. You can extract data from your model. You can assign custom data to the objects in your model and extract that. But the way you use that data is so garbage. It's just like it
arbitrary.
It extracts a CSV or like an Excel file, which, you know, breaks any sort of dynamic link you have to your data. So now you're exporting a static file, and then it's like, okay, well, layout does have the table tool where you can like link it to an Excel file. Okay, that's cool. But now it's like anytime you change your model, you'd have to re-export that spreadsheet and like make sure it's all working right. I don't get why, like, you
Why is
should,
there no link in
yeah,
layout?
yeah, like you should literally in layout, you should be able to like select the table and then be like link to model.
Right.
And then
Mhm.
all of those attributes should be able to, and then like the other big problem I feel like with generate, this is kind of like a personal thing for me. Like this is like I
We've hit
wish,
a
like,
nerve
come
here.
on, yeah, like come on, we can get so much better with just a little bit more. So like when you run generate report, you have to, like, let's say you want to create a window schedule for the project, right? There's like no way for you to like just extract the windows from the model. Like you could do
That's
one
right.
of several things.
There's no
You could select,
filter.
yeah, there's no filter. We need like smart filters, like you can select, okay, so you could either export everything and then like
Mhm.
do your filtering in Excel,
Mhm.
which is not great, or you could select just the things you want and export it, which goes back to the same thing of like if you make a change, now you got to go through that all over again.
Select
And
the
then
same thing
there's,
all over again.
yeah, and then there's like you can isolate it by like the nesting level, which kind of forces you to like change the way you organize your model. If you want, like, you could, if you're really clever, you can kind of like structure your model where you can just easily export that, with a couple clicks every time. But now it kind of forces you to like change your logic on how you want to structure your model.
I mean,
Yeah,
on
and
the
So
I
it's like,
other hand, just coming from Revit background as well, all drawing 3D model and quantifying, generating data is within the same software, so it's all streamlined.
yeah,
But
yeah.
just to tell you something, is that there's no way to actually link Excel file in Revit. So,
Oh, really?
if you ever want to bring in external data, you have to just input it manually. There's no way to
Oh.
have a live link. So there's that. So I don't know what's worse, whether not having any live data and not having any sort of filter method versus not being able to link in a simple Excel file. That's
Yeah.
yeah, and it needs to be all done through like some sort of scripting, dynamo scripting if they wish to. And someone like me who are not really programming background, I can't do that, and I can't just kind of manage sort of the large amount of data and feeding into the sheets, and that's a difficult bit. But I guess it's different software has pros and cons always.
Yeah, so but like I guess my point is like, they focus a bunch of effort on a new feature or something, but like then it's just dropped off and it's never polished. Um then there's like, like the virtual reality, I don't know if you guys have ever played around with it, but like the official SketchUp VR. Actually, Joseph, you did a
Hmm.
review on that one actually.
Hmm.
Um,
That felt like a flash in the pan.
well, I was not impressed with it. But it's like clearly there was a ton of development like resources that went into it. I mean, there's all sorts of menus and features and like all this stuff, but it's like it's just kind of hard to use, and it's like I immediately, so like when I used, you guys use Enscape, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
The VR feature in Enscape,
Oh,
isn't that
nailed it.
like the most SketchUp-y way to do
Nailed it.
VR? Like it's one button, you click it, you're in VR. Like
The
why
end.
didn't SketchUp do, yeah, you know what I mean?
But
It's
maybe
like,
there's another side of that where you don't want to compete with some of the third party that's available. Like when the native SketchUp, because I think they developed it on Unity, and
yeah,
when they did that, when it was in the development, Enscape was already up and going, just kicking in VR aspect, and it just meeting the expectation and also excelling so that it is sort of beyond that. It was kind of like a difficult goal, I feel like. And, you know, obviously we kind of glanced at it. I glanced at it once, and I just kind of left it at that. And there was like a development towards Oculus versus, you know, Windows mixed reality. So I know there was a secondary development, and I don't know where it is at now.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem I have with the SketchUp version is you have to save your SketchUp model and then go into VR and like upload the model. Whereas like the way Enscape did it and
It's
a lot of
seamless.
other ones, it's live.
Inside.
You're in your live model. And the same thing with like VR Sketch. It's beautiful.
I have showed clients the Enscape like walkthrough live while we were modeling, and having them see model updates take place
awesome.
live in VR. Oh, this fireplace or this fireplace?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
and it's like, why didn't SketchUp, first of all, why didn't SketchUp like envision just like a simple solution like that, where it's like, it's just a live link, it's one button, you click it, you're in VR, it's live with your model. That's
it
the
looks
first,
like your
that's
model.
the first thing. But secondly, I would be very curious to know how many people actually use that feature, and to know that they'd put that much development resources towards that versus focusing on getting layout up to par with what people expect. You know, that's where I just get kind of frustrated. You know, like
I feel
seeing
like
these big major projects being undertaken where you have, you know, a lot of these kind of performance things with layout that go on for years, you know.
I almost feel like SketchUp is kind of going through some growing pains. And I feel like SketchUp's always going through growing pains.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're having sort of an existential crisis of what do they want to be? Do they want to be an architecture visualization tool, or do they want to be a production tool? And they don't know where they want to go with it. And they just keep getting stuck kind of in the middle.
But, you know, you also have to consider woodworking, furniture design, production, drawing. I come from architecture background, so I'm on that other side of the spectrum.
But I think the other side of that, and that's an interesting point, is that, you know, SketchUp has a very broad user base. A lot of that comes from the fact that when they went from Atlas to Google, it went to a very free, open platform that everybody could get a hold of. And now they've kind of walled everything off from a paywall standpoint and said, okay, you have to pay to play. And then now it's like, okay, how do we adjust our approach to give people what they want, and who's our audience? Because I have a feeling while there are a lot of woodworkers and carpentry individuals using it, the broader spectrum is typically architects doing design work and
But
pre-design and schematic design in SketchUp.
But I also see so much, like whenever I go on Basecamp, I just see so much of a user base in like woodworking and production design and furniture design, that sort of thing, to architecture and like urban planning and landscape design. And there's no other single sort of piece of software that captures that wide
breadth.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, like, you know, the people like us who have used SketchUp forever, like, you know, we do get frustrated about certain things, but like at the end of the day, like what are the other options? I mean, the biggest thing that SketchUp has going for it are two things. It's how just easy it is to use. Like it just really feels effortless to model. Like once you get past like the basics, you learn your keyboard shortcuts, and you reach a threshold where it's just like your mind is imagining what you want, and you know, it just goes on the screen.
You just flow.
Yeah.
And the second, exactly. You know, there's no technical hurdles getting in the way. And the second thing is price. It's an affordable, drawing package. I mean, compared to anything else, like what's the next best thing? I mean,
then
you know, I
you
guess
have to buy
BricsCAD.
different suite of
I
software.
think the only thing that I can think of that is comparable to SketchUp and generally affordable is ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD's the only other one that I can think of that you can produce usable drawings from, but also not a lot of US based. It's around what, $1,100, $1,200 for ArchiCAD.
That's a big difference.
Well,
I mean, SketchUp is what, $299 a year?
I'm thinking studio licenses.
Yeah.
I'm thinking from a studio point of view. So like our office would be doing.
You're not comparing it to SketchUp Studio.
No, not. Yeah. There's nothing that really compares to SketchUp Studio at that $300 price point.
Before we go too far, I want to capture Jorge Aguilar's question. I know we kind of touched on it, but his question was, how do you handle layout to quickly and efficiently generate SketchUp drawings? Do you have any methodology? And I think you kind of touched on that. But one final question was, do you use any plugins? And I wanted to ask this question to Matt as well, was what would be sort of your top 3 extensions that you would like to use on SketchUp?
Well, first, you know, I was just complaining about layout and performance and stuff. The secret to it, and Nick actually, it's funny because Nick Sonder, the architect I co-wrote this book with, he actually disagrees with me. He thinks everything's fine. He's like, SketchUp's great, layout's great, everyone should stop complaining. It works great. And I'm like, really? Like, you're totally cool. And honestly, he's really happy with it. And his, you know, the solution is to know the level of detail to draw at. That tends to be the biggest thing. You know, if you're trying to model more detail than you even need to show on your drawings, that's going to quickly cause problems. So that's really the number one thing is really dialing down that level of detail. And just kind of being honest with yourself on what you need to show. And then as far as plugins for the Nick Sonder method specifically, he doesn't use any plugins. Like it's really pretty cool. And you know, I really respected that because I actually
the purist
I don't use
approach.
Well, you know, he's got a lot of he doesn't even use a mouse. He uses like a you know, Wacom tablet.
Wait, really?
I don't know how. I'm telling you, yeah. I don't know how he does it. Yeah. He's like, it's great because I just point exactly where I want to be, and it's like right there.
It's like chisel for woodworking, you know, the purest approach to SketchUp.
But like he's so fast. I don't get it. He's you know, he like as far as the number of projects that he manages by himself, he's you know, at this point he's a one-man operation, and I think he's got like 6 projects going in tandem, or like this year or something he went through like 6 projects, and hands down he says he couldn't have done it without SketchUp and layout. So yeah, that's really interesting. As far as me personally, my favorite plugins, my most favorite plugin I would have to say is Profile Builder. I've said that in the past, and I think the reason
Studio, Dale, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the reason is it's not just like most plugins offer like a single functionality, you know, a single automation or a single whatever, but like Profile Builder is like an engine to enable you to do, you know, a ton of different things, not just extrude profiles, but you know, create smart assemblies and stuff like that. Now, seeing that, you know, live components are going to be you know, a new feature in SketchUp. Well, I mean, it's already a feature in SketchUp, but like being able to author our own live components, I'm really anxious to see what that's going to be like, because there are a lot of similarities to you know, some of the assembly features in Profile Builder. Another favorite plugin is actually one that I built myself.
Oh.
And it's like
shameless plug.
Well, I mean, it's like it's not for sale or anything. It's just
No
like
pun intended.
it's so basically like I need to like in the work that I do. So I do have a client, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on. I do some freelance work for a client, and part of that scope of work is comparing the structural drawings to the architectural drawings and creating like a very low level detail model. And so part of that is modeling the all the headers and beams that the structural engineer is calling out, and verifying that the jack studs and king studs will all fit within the wall as specified. And that became a very tedious task because I was constantly having to jump back to the beam schedule and like being like, okay, an H2 beam has 2 jack studs and 1 king stud, and obviously that's prone to human error and all that. But so I wrote my own extension that I could basically load the header schedule into it, and I can just like select the beam from a drop down menu and like model. So basically it's just 2 clicks and it models the beam and the jack studs and king studs and everything.
Is this in SketchUp? I feel
No.
like no.
Nobody's got it. It's mine.
Oh, so you don't sell it? Nothing?
No,
Okay.
no. It's like I wouldn't even give it to anyone because like if you don't use it the right way, it'll like break and not work right.
No customer service.
No customer service. It's just it's like one of those things that I just slapped it together, and I know I have to like do a thing in a certain order, certain sequence in order to make it work. But
well, there you go. There's a
very valuable
secret, but not accessible.
There might be some value in that. I mean, because I've gone down the same road where I've had to model certain beams and get them just right, and it's painful.
Yeah. And I mean, part of the problem is like I'm not really a programmer. I mean, I do a little bit I do enough to like get it to work, but like if I there's like some guys on the SketchUp forum who are like expert Ruby developers, and if you don't, it's weird. It's like you can write the language in a way that it works, but it's like formatted terribly, and it's just you could clean it up better and
optimize, and there are certain ways you need to do it to not collide with anything else.
Yeah.
Oh man, at Chaos Group, that was our biggest hurdle, was making our plugin not fight with other plugins unintentionally.
Yeah. There's like namespaces that you have to
painful.
make sure you're all. Yeah, that's a big part of it, because essentially like every plugin you install all operates under the same language or the same engine. They're not inherently isolated from each other, so you have to like each developer has to
stay within
create
the
a
zone.
structure of namespace.
Yeah, and whenever you have some sort of weird bug, something not happening, and you post it, and the first question that you get as an answer is like, "Did you install V-Ray?" was one of the common answers. Like, no, just disable it, then you should be fine. That used to be a thing for a long time.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure it kind of is similar.
Just don't shoot me. I was not a programmer. I was just a product manager. Oh man, that's funny. Yeah. Well, if you need the names of any good programmers that have SketchUp backgrounds, let me know. I happen to know a few. So
really, that's rare. They're a very scarce breed.
Yeah. Hen's teeth, man.
Yeah, Ted just like kidnaps them and then just corner them and never release them.
Yep, I still got them in the closet. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've thought about like developing some extensions, but it's like one of those things. Once you're constantly coming up with different business ideas and different things to do, and I've got a big list of things I've never pursued, but Yeah, maybe someday.
All right. I'm gonna just try and glance at a couple of comments here. There's a mention
Sure.
of conduct tools, and I have to kind of throw it out
Oh
there for
yeah,
you guys. Since layout and SketchUp, have you ever used conduct tools in
that's
your
uh
workflow?
that's John Brock, right?
No,
That's
Conduct
Mike
tools.
Brightman.
Mike Brightman.
Mike Brightman. Sorry.
Yeah, so Mike Brightman wrote the SketchUp workflow for architecture. He's also a SketchUp author, and so I have used. Well, I haven't used conduct tools, but I like played around with it several years ago. Now, I understand that it has changed significantly since I've used it in the past, but one thing that you know I realized was you can like basically the fundamental, like the key, the crux of like how the whole thing works can essentially be duplicated by anyone could just kind of duplicate the functionality. It's really clever actually. And again, I don't know if this has changed um, with more recent versions, and I know they've actually developed quite a few additional features that look pretty cool. But like the fundamental thing behind the whole plugin is that you have like a bunch of scrapbooks that have essentially your like a dummy floor plan already set up, and so you just drag the floor plan into your layout document, and you also have a set of SketchUp templates that you use, and those templates already have the tags set up, the scenes set up, all of that stuff. And so what happens is when you drag those dummy floor plans into layout, and you all you have to do is relink the model. And it's just like a functionality of how layout works. If you have a viewport that is set to a certain scene, if you relink it to another model that has the same scenes, like the same named scenes, it'll actually like it'll just work. So you basically are replacing that dummy reference model with your actual model. And it's like super
Okay.
clever. It really it's like when you see it, you're like, oh my God, that's so smart. But like you could basically replicate that yourself. Now that like years ago, I would say that was kind of like an equal replacement, meaning like you wouldn't really need the plugin, but they've added a lot of features since then. And I think one of the things in the past was like you were really limited, like you had to follow their specific
Naming and
naming. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Like all the tags and everything like that. But I think now it's really customizable in that respect as well. So that's kind of made it nice
I felt
as
like
well.
it was like a sort of supersized template sort of workflow
Mm-hmm.
where you can just kind of repeat things, and if you have certain type of projects in certain way, you can just continue using it that way. I'm more of a person who wants maximum amount of control and sort of customizable aspects of the project, and I like figuring out little tiny little tricks here and there. So I just couldn't really marry to a like template system. Was at least on my part, and I just couldn't really embed that into my daily workflow because every project was so unique that I couldn't use the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I think that's where it really shines is if you are doing the type of projects that are
Very similar.
follow the same, yeah, exactly, same tags, same type of expectations of floor plans and all that kind of stuff. Works really well for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one I was thinking of initially was, I don't know if you've messed around with it. It typically seems like it's more developed for builders rather than architects and designers. But Estimator for SketchUp is what I was thinking of when you said condoc tools. And I don't know if you've messed around with Estimator, but it's a pretty powerful little tool.
There's a
Um,
Quantifier Pro from Mindsight Studio as well. I kind of touched on it. It was quite useful.
yeah,
A bit better than
they
native
all sort of
SketchUp.
do the same.
Yeah,
Just
so Estimator is by John Brock, like you had mentioned, and he he also created Framer.
Mm-hmm.
Now the cool thing about John is he is like still an active builder, and so he's like that's his expertise, and he
And
originally
apparently
built these
musician
plugins.
too.
Yeah, he's quite
Yeah.
a musician. That's true. Yeah, I've seen plenty of Facebook videos with him playing. His wife's actually an amazing artist too. I
Oh
don't know if
wow.
you've seen any of her
Oh, her
her
paintings are
artwork, but
great.
yeah, yeah. But so originally he created these plugins just for himself to help him, and so he does model at a very high level of detail. He's modeling all the studs and insulation. I mean, he's representing pretty much all the materials on the project in the model. And so, you definitely need to use plugins or extensions if you're going to do that. Another one is Plus Spec. That one's kind of like, an
BIM,
attempt to make
Australian
SketchUp a
BIM is how I
Yeah,
describe it.
Australian BIM. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So.
Before it gets too late, did you want to touch bases on your case study or book, something like that?
Sure. So I can share my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. So yeah, let me just do
We
this
have
real
so
quick.
many questions, unusual amount of questions in chat.
All right.
So kudos to Matt hosting
Let's get some.
today, and but we want to get through the content that we kind of prepared for,
Well, you can
and
throw
we'll
some
see.
questions my way as I'm going through this too.
Sure.
That's fine.
Wow.
So yeah, I wanted to just kind of show like some of the freelance work that I do, because I don't really see a lot of people using SketchUp in this way, but so I have one client that I do some freelance work for, and basically I create these really low level of detail models. Actually, I'm not going to move around too much because I think it's lagging.
That's all good.
But yeah, so I create these really low level of detail models. Like you notice I don't have the doors in there. I don't have windows. The walls are just represented by just a simple massing of rectangle extruded up, and this is built off of a provided architectural plan set as well as a structural plan set. Now, the problem I'm trying to solve here is, ultimately, kind of BIM is the answer, right? Like ultimately, if everyone works in 3D and everything's coordinated and you do your clash detection and everyone's working in a master model that gets reviewed and everyone's on the same page as far as level of detail, this is not necessary to do this, but this workflow is sort of like a way to enable their existing workflow to continue without having to change anything, and I can just provide like an extra level of review to the process. So what I'm trying to do is find discrepancies in the plans, conflicts between the structural and architectural drawings. And the third major thing, as you can see, is I have the truss model imported. So this is actually imported from the truss manufacturer.
Oh wow.
Okay.
And
I was gonna say that had to be brutal to model. So.
Well, it's actually brutal to import, believe it or not. It's really frustrating because the different software. Basically, the different truss manufacturers use different software, but most of the time it's a program called MyTech, or a program made by a company called MyTech. And the thing that's frustrating is like all the trusses. Like most of the time, you can kind of see here, like you can look at some of these trusses and identify that some of them repeat. Like it's the same exact truss. And it's just like, multiple, like maybe 5 or 6 copies of the same truss.
It's gone.
I just lost my screen.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
The
Oh,
camera's
no.
fine. The presentation stopped.
That's okay.
By the way, Aaron's in town, so Aaron Ditson is in the
Hey.
chat.
Aaron,
Welcome.
good to see you, man. So one of the things that's frustrating is when the trusses get imported, they don't retain the actual like component wrapper, you know. So it'll all just be like, they'll actually all be components, but they will all be unique components. Like
Oh,
every single truss.
no.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
That's
and like,
the worst.
it's really bad, and so like it makes it even more bloated, because like if they were all just groups, it would be better. But yeah, so it's really frustrating. So there's actually a lot of kind of cleanup that I try to do, and so
there are few
it's a little
things,
frustrating.
at least in my aspect, whenever I bring in Revit stuff into SketchUp, they're all unique components, and there are maybe like a couple of things that are exact same parameter will be identical components, and it's really hard to pick out and replace all of those in the right place. I use SU select, SU underscore select, and select things based on volume, and that tends to give me the same components, and then I can choose all of them and then replace it. That's and I mentioned the component replacer, Ted, on our last sort of model
Oh, yeah, that's
critique session. So that's another aspect that I do whenever there's as complex as a
there's-
trust thing coming in. I wouldn't really bother that, but for anyone who's doing similar sort of method, carrying few things and they're all showing up as a unique component, that's sometimes helpful to do that.
Well, I did find TomTom actually has an extension. I don't know if that's the one you just mentioned, and I can't remember what it's called, but it basically will analyze your entire model and identify identical components and like reassociate them to a single definition. It's awesome.
I need
like,
that.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it works really well. I mean, well, it works well. It's not perfect. Like sometimes I don't know if it's just like the sheer like number of trusses that I select at the same time. Like sometimes I'll have to like do sub selections and run it. But when it works, it's like, holy cow, this is awesome. I now have unique definitions, and I can trust that, you know, if I look at one, all the other ones are good to go. But yeah, so basically my, you know, that whole work process is just finding those discrepancies using just a very simple model. So it's like really fast to do, and we're catching mistakes that would cost thousands of dollars to fix in the field, and it's not requiring them to change their existing workflow, you know. So that's what I think is kind of unique about it.
Yeah, we have a funny chat coming in. I think that's why Ted just kind of laughed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But Indy 3D is saying that mine and Matt's have nice background, but my man Ted bet is 10 out of 10.
Not my doing, all my wife.
Is that a Beauty and the Beast pillow behind you?
Be our guest, yes. Yes.
I actually just learned Beauty and the Beast on guitar.
Oh,
wow. Really?
Just
Which
randomly.
one?
I don't know, like the main theme song. I was just playing around with it, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that. I'm actually a big Disney fan, so I could actually buy that pillow and put it on my bed. My wife would not object.
Yeah, that Be Our Guest is a popular song with our daughter lately, so
Yeah.
you know, works well. But
Yeah.
we actually have guests coming this weekend, so everything's put together too.
But it looks
Hence
like
the
that every week,
little-
Ted.
Well, the little like extra
The goodies.
the goodie bag over
Yeah.
there.
Oh, that's
is
hospitality right there.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm coming.
You know, I actually
You're welcome.
got kicked out of my home office because we just had twins. So that's now the nursery.
Yep.
And I had to find a remote
Garage.
office. So
Yep.
I wish I had a garage.
Man, that's how I ended up at so my company works out of it's called the ETC. It's like a shared office space. That's the exact reason I'm there now.
Yeah.
Is when we had our daughter 3 years ago, my wife's like, your office would make a wonderful nursery. Now get out, Ted.
Yeah, I do not have anything more, but there's a few mentioned about different extension writers, and they're pointing out Fred 06 and Tom
Oh, yeah.
Tom, and they are able to just kind of guide you if you were to post things on the forum. So, if you know enough, I can't utilize that at all because I am not by any means a programmer. I have attempted a few times, and Christina Aniroff had helped me a few times but I just couldn't get it off the ground at all. And
It's
What were you trying
tough.
to build?
yeah, I was just trying to do something very simple.
Hello world.
Well, that is on the guide, and I was successful at least in that one. But here's a weird thing, and I maybe it is just me, but I want a way to easily manipulate axes inside of a model that are nested. So there is a way to replay, and place the axes within components or groups, but I want to do that as sort of outside of the group or more global level and apply to all the components, because sometimes you change the global axis, the boundary box is not in the right shape, and then you want to just kind of do a quick sort of reset of a boundary box so that all the axes inside is realigned to the shape of whatever the best shape. And TomTom's axis tool allows you to center it either at the very bottom or the edge or at the very center of the volume, but it doesn't align. And
Right.
I want sort of batch method to just kind of realign things. And that's because when architecture happens, you reorient, and then all the walls and everything just completely goes out of. And often I put walls and everything. Let's say like the truss model, you bring in, and your global sort of axis had been slightly off, and all of those trusses, I want the axis of the truss to be the best sort of boundary box to each of those trusses, but it is going to be all twisted. Once you click on your boundary box is X large because you've got all of those twisted elements. And I've searched many times. I spent hours looking for it. I just couldn't find a way. And I was like, I'm so fed up. I want to write this one. And I just couldn't even start. She did help me. Aniroff did help me resetting the she did issue that plugin when I kind of consulted with her. I was like, if you write this for me, you're free to issue that. And she did that, and it was sort of batch mirroring, so you can always flip and do, I think you can batch mirror all of them at the same time to another side, and rather than all being flipped to from a same origin, all of them are flipping from their center point. So and that wasn't available elsewhere. It's a similar sort of axis control, but I wanted to write that, but I haven't been able to do so. If anyone listening who's able, I welcome, and I would further elaborate if you ever reach me.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, it's there's just something about writing code and seeing SketchUp like draw a rectangle and like just from your code. I don't know, it's just something completely different from, clicking a mouse and kind of manually doing it. It just really you can go down a rabbit hole for sure.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, the one thing that I really enjoyed. I don't know if either of you have ever messed around with Grasshopper in
No.
Rhino. That kind of made it a little bit simpler for programming because it was node based. So you were just like, oh, this math element I know I need here, and you just kind of plug them together until it works. Like I feel like if somebody made a Ruby scripting plugin that was node based, we might all have a chance.
There is one. There is one.
is?
There's a node-based Ruby script that's meant for SketchUp, and I remember seeing it like about 2 years ago in development. I don't know if it ever sort of got off the ground and further developed, but there was basically the Grasshopper of SketchUp. I forget what it was
Well, the other
called.
thing is I did when live components became when it was
Parametric.
announced, they mentioned that it was actually they had like Trimble had bought out some existing software company, and that's what the technology was based on. And I did some research and found some screenshots of like the old, like I had to go in the Internet Archives, and like I saw like this old screenshot of that software, and it looked very similar to Grasshopper. Like it was all the node based, tying things together. So like I said, I'm very anxious to get my hands on the live component authoring tools, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen.
Soon, hopefully.
So did you? I left a link to your website as well as your book page. But was there a specific link that you want me to leave in the chat, perhaps? To get access to your latest book, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah. So the latest book is SketchUp to Layout, second edition. So this replaces the first book that I wrote, and it includes I wrote like basically the whole book has brand new screenshots, high res screenshots, and I added. Of course, the whole thing is updated to like the latest version of SketchUp, but I also added like 180 pages of like pure beginner stuff for SketchUp, which wasn't in the first book. So this is truly like a one book that you can buy if you don't know anything about SketchUp at all. You don't know anything about 3D modeling. You can learn SketchUp and layout. And the website that you were asking me is sketchuptolayout.com. So right now it is on back order. We're manufacturing a large first order, and that should be. I actually spoke to my manufacturer today, and we're still on target for that to be completed on Friday. But then it has to board a cargo ship and get shipped over to California, and so that's going to be about another month. So we're looking at probably towards the end of July before they start shipping out. So
yeah, link in the chat, guys. And also that extension that I was talking about, Indie 3D has said it here, is the node editor. And I just searched and I confirm that's what I had seen before. Justin apparently has covered it before, so I guess you guys could go ahead and watch that video.
He's covered everything.
I know. What hasn't he?
Covered. He's got like 4 YouTube channels.
I know.
I don't know how.
And he has a day job too.
And a full-time day job. He's insane.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Machine.
I haven't even posted a YouTube video in like 2 months.
None of us know, but there may be multiple Justin, and just
that's probably what it is.
He's cloned himself, and he's just like running around everywhere.
You know what's funny too? He actually just became a father in the same month as myself.
Really?
Yeah, his son was born in September as well.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just kind of funny. We were texting back and forth,
Well, he did clone himself,
stuff.
I guess, in that aspect.
Yeah.
Is there sort of other topic that we want to cover? We're at the top of the hour that we have booked for. I don't want to drag you guys along too far.
Never.
Well, all of this would be in recording, so if any of you have missed out, I'm sure a lot of people will be watching this after we kind of close off. And if anything, just leave comments down, and I'll personally look at it. For question wise, you can go ahead and leave comments, and
Yeah,
also
I'll keep an eye on the comment section as well if anyone has any questions for me.
yeah, that would be awesome. And obviously, Matt has his own channel that is much bigger than mine, so I'm just piggybacking on right now. So,
Well,
um,
like I said, I haven't even I don't even know when my last video was. I'm like terribly inconsistent. I
but
mean, I've been like focusing on the book like 100% for the past like 3 months. So I've just like nothing else matters.
yeah, absolutely. And you just got to put your head down and just
Yeah.
get working. And that goes to say how valuable your content is, because even if you're not there constantly pumping out content, like unlike somebody, you are still having a large base who values your work. So that goes to say that you're creating valuable content out there, and so am I. I think last video that you issued on SketchUp release, like I watched it too, and I couldn't agree more on some of the things that you've said. And the quality, your production level is very high, I must say. And just even at looking at the screen here too, all of your effort is all appreciated from same YouTuber point of view to here.
Well,
Man,
maybe
I
that's
feel like
part
such
of
a
the
slacker.
well, it can, I think about, because it's like, you do it for so long and you're like, oh, well, if I just, upgrade my lens, it'll be this much better. Stuff like that is easy because it's like you do it once and then it's like, okay, now I don't have to think about it. But it kind of, it's tough when you keep adding like, oh, well, I should do a graphic, and oh, well, now I need to change the graphic every time with the new title, and you start adding little things over and over, and then it gets to the point where it's been 2 months since you've done a video because it's just so much work.
Yep. Yeah.
So it can be a downfall. I mean, it's not, sometimes I wonder, Justin's got it figured out. I mean, he sits down, he hits record, and
Out with the video.
there's the video, and he covers so much. It's really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But be sure to subscribe to Matt's channel, MasterSketchUp, and I'll also leave a link in the description for his website, as well as, let's not forget, Ted is here. I'll also leave a link for the Voxel Vision, his company, and I really appreciate both of you today joining us for the talk, and I hope other people have enjoyed as well. And I think I'm going to wrap things up here and do the outro. You guys are free to talk, but they're going to hear us. So,
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And I'll see you next week.
Have a great rest of your evening.
See you guys.
And that is it.